All right, awesome. All right, post-election, we got the results. Initial
Yeah.
thoughts, let's hear them.
What are yours? I want you to go first. I'm curious.
I am obviously, given my political leanings, not happy with how the election went. I could be a lot more unhappy. Obviously, if Trump had won, that would be devastating to the progressive movement. But Biden wins. That's a good win. But not winning the Senate, I feel like, is a big loss. And losing seats in the House shows a fundamental flaw in the Democrat strategy.
So I have a quick question. Would you rather have won the Senate and lost the White House?
That's a really interesting question. I would almost say just because you got to think about the flip that usually happens, in the when the president wins, that in the midterms that the House usually flips to the other direction. That's an interesting question, but I gotta think a win at the top of the ticket is better than winning the Senate. What would be your perspective? Which would you have preferred that Republicans won?
I would rather them keep the Senate, in my opinion.
Now, is that because, or you go?
No, I'm just saying because if they have to lose one,
yeah,
I would rather them be able to not necessarily block policy, but have a larger voice in policy.
See, that's almost like part of the problem. It's like if because Republicans, they only need one branch to be obstructionist. You know what I mean? And because conservatism means having in most instances less legislation going through. And so, especially when you just had a conservative president and conservative Senate. And so there is an advantage when Republicans only need one branch really to get what they need to done. And they also have the judiciary now. You know what I mean? So unless there's any sort of court packing, I mean, a lot of things that go to the Supreme Court, it's probably going to get overturned with the 6-3 conservative court.
Yeah, I mean, see, that bothers me about the whole court thing. Like, I don't think the court should be right or left leaning. I just think it should be, interpretation. But anyway, my thoughts about it is I'm not shocked that he won, right? Because even in my prediction, I had Trump winning 288 to 250. So even me, I had it relatively close, So I mean,
oh yeah,
you could figure a swing here in the state here, like Arizona. I didn't see that going blue,
yeah.
And I wish I would have paid
this
more.
Is the first time it went blue in a while, huh?
Yeah, 26 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so that's fair.
And you know what? I should pay more attention to Mark Kelly because he polled really, really well, and he kind of pushed the Dem wave, the Democratic wave in Arizona. So, I mean, I definitely overlooked that. But I think the rebuilding of the firewall, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that was huge for Joe Biden. That in itself, I think definitely won him the election.
No, I agree. But I wouldn't even call it a rebuilding because it wasn't Biden's campaign that rebuilt. You know what I mean? He didn't campaign. This was just, there were people on the ground. You know what I mean? You had, Rashida Tlaib in Michigan. But I mean, for the most part, it was not Biden's campaign that I feel like why he won in those states. He was really just took such a passive stance this election. And if I got to think that without the pandemic, if Trump had been able to hold the rallies that he would have run, I don't know, maybe Biden would have ran a different campaign in that situation, but I think that Biden lucked out in that regard because I think that the lack of rallies probably helped Biden.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do definitely want to say that I definitely think this election was more a referendum on Trump than it was the GOP itself. Because if you look at these races, even if the GOP lost congressional seats, they were close. Even in California, I saw a few races that were decently close. I mean, to be able to flip the seat in Alabama, that was big. The loss of the seat in Colorado was big. But I mean, if you look at those polls in Georgia, once they do this runoff, I mean, the GOP is going to take that. I mean, there were so many miscellaneous candidates that got votes here and votes there that aren't going to get those votes in, whenever they do the runoff.
No, I'd say that that's probably true. And I definitely agree on this. It was a referendum on Trump, and that was the fundamental flaw of the Democrat strategy is that they wanted to act like Trump is the rarity. This is the oddity in the Republican Party. He's not what the Republicans stand for. And that's why they uplift people like, John Kasich, Colin Powell at the convention. They're saying here are some good Republicans. We like these Republicans. There's nothing wrong with the ideology. The problem is with Trump. And that's why you see races where, Trump lost, but Republicans still won. I mean, they won House seats in areas that Trump lost. And so it just shows that there was a flaw in that regard.
Especially in Michigan, like that Senate race in Michigan. I mean, I think the incumbent won by like 0.7. I mean, that's huge because I mean, Biden carried Michigan by a large portion. So you got to think there are people out there that are voting for Joe Biden just to vote against Trump. But they're voting for the GOP policy later on the end of the ticket.
No, I agree. All right, here, just give me what is your take on Florida?
What do you mean?
Well, just because I know that you thought that Trump was going to take Florida, and so what is your post hoc? Trump did take Florida.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
No, exactly. So, like, what is your, you feel like what were the indicators that you were looking at, prior to Florida? Did those end up being true? Like, what, I know that you mentioned a few during our first discussion, but what do you think now?
So I was actually looking for like the actual numbers, and unfortunately, my Wi-Fi like right now is kind of sucking because I saw some exit polling earlier, but I saw an exit poll that had Joe Biden doing 10% less than what Hillary Clinton did. In Miami-Dade among Hispanics and African Americans, and Hillary Clinton did 10 percentage points less than Barack Obama. So that's a huge swing in the span of 8 years that they're losing votes. And I said this earlier when I was talking to my friends, if the GOP can pinpoint their success in Florida and market that in other states, I mean, they should be on track to win the next, few elections if they can do that.
So it's really interesting because I think that you see this same disconnect that I feel like you see in other states, but to a different degree. Because in Florida, you have the $15 an hour minimum wage pass, and
right.
I feel
and it passed by 2 million votes.
Exactly. It won by like a pretty solid amount. And so when Biden loses that state, but an issue that he was running on, now he didn't talk about it at all, but that wasn't his platform. It just shows that there was like this weird, I mean, what do you attribute that shift that we're seeing in Florida?
So I think Andrew Yang, he was on CNN, and did you see him on CNN?
I haven't seen that, no.
So he talked about it. There is a disconnect in the Democratic Party between the Democrats and the working class. Because tradition, I mean, like whether you want to debate semantics and politics, the Democratic Party has always been the party for the working people. And to have that disconnect with the working class and their party in Florida, I mean, to me, that equals a Trump victory when you have policies that on the Democratic platform pass. You have a $15 minimum wage. You have all these other so progressive policies that are going to, vote yes on the referendum. But then your leading ticket loses, and he lost by 2 million votes in Florida or 1 million votes in Florida?
Yeah, I think it was at least 1 million votes. I don't know if it was 2 million, but yeah.
So I mean, that's a huge disconnect when 64% of the people in Florida voted for the $15 minimum wage.
Exactly. And so, I mean, do you think if they run a more progressive candidate that leans into those policies that might be popular in Florida, do you see them doing better in Florida, or do you think it's a branding issue? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a branding issue for sure. I think the DNC is going to have a problem in Florida, probably for the years to come, just based off their party and their connection with the far left.
Okay, so you think that the socialist branding, you think that that's hurting them in Florida?
Yeah, for sure.
When people call them socialist, okay, that's really interesting. I know obviously $15 an hour minimum wage isn't socialism, but there's some people in the Republican Party that would probably call it socialism. So it's just weird to see this disconnect there. And so I feel like we got to mention it. The voter fraud. Do you think that there was voter fraud? Do you think that that's an issue? Like, what is your take on this?
So I'd actually be interested to hear your take on this, and this is kind of where I'm at with the election. I said in 2016. I didn't believe there was Russian interference in our elections. In our election, it is extremely difficult to actually create votes, right? Yeah. Whether you're on one side or the other. So, do I believe there was voter fraud? On small cases, like you could say, people mailing in ballots for their mom or their cousin or whatever. But on large scale, no, I don't see it. And I think that's the problem with the Republicans right now. And in my opinion, I wish Trump would just come out and say, hey, you know what? I lost. It is what it is. The people voted for, this candidate. That's who they want to represent them. And we'll move on to the next election. But in 2016, it was, Hillary lost and it was Russian interference. And now in 2020, it's President Trump lost and it's voter fraud. At some point, we have to have faith in our election system, on both sides of the party. We have to, know that our election system is intact, it works, and the electorate voted for their president. And I mean, that's what you can say at the end of the day.
No, I think it's really interesting because that's almost like exactly my take. Because I also feel like the Russian interference thing, incredibly overplayed. I mean, obviously it didn't lead to anything tangible. I mean, there are some people that might be like, oh, but there was, this, minute thing. It really didn't. Trump's record didn't really show that he was doing things that benefited Russia. At least not what I've seen. I've never seen any evidence of like what the benefit exactly is to Russia. So yeah, I think it was a whole lot of nothing. And I think that the mail-in vote, like I think that you bring up a really good point. It's like it's not like it doesn't happen. There are probably people that turn in a ballot for their mom, or maybe a second ballot gets turned in somewhere. But on a large scale, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that that's happening. Now, I know that there's, talks in like Michigan, they said like 138,000 votes came in for just Biden. I don't think that that's true. If I looked at it, it was 150,000. It was just 138 of them were for Biden. But regardless, I mean, and then Trump's calling for a recount in Wisconsin. I mean, do you see any of this like leading anywhere? Like, do you see any of this, like, any of these legal battles actually having an effect?
No. So and that's why. So if I'm the GOP and if I'm Trump, I take this almost as a positive, as across the end, on the bottom end of our ticket, we won.
Yeah.
So our top end of the ticket was the problem. If you change that, you maybe win. I did see an exit poll that said 71% of people in Florida that voted for President Trump voted for President Trump. Like they were actively voting for him. I saw another exit poll that said it was like 55% of the people were voting against President Trump.
Okay, so, that's interesting.
I mean, if you have people actively disliking a person and maybe they don't vote ever, and they're like, hey, you know what? I don't like this man. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna cast a ballot this time. You change the top end of the ticket, and maybe you don't have that problem in the future elections, or maybe you could sway them to your side.
And I feel like that creates like a really interesting question as to like where Republicans are going forward. Like, are we going to see like a similar split as like we're seeing in the Democratic Party, where there's the more progressive wing and then we have the more establishment wing? Are we going to see that in the Republican Party too, or has Trump just co-opted the base in such a way that like his messaging is what's going to ring through? I mean, I've heard people. I saw one. I forgot who it was, but they said that Tucker Carlson is the most likely 2024 Republican candidate. I don't know how likely that is, but it's interesting if that's where they think the party is going. I don't know. What is your take?
So I actually saw something that said that Mike Pence is probably the most likely candidate for 2024.
I think he'll run. He'll definitely run.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a whole different story. I'm a little worried about that when it comes to the GOP, because if you say whatever you want about Trump, his base is strong, and they flock to him.
I mean, he has like 90% approval rating in the Republican Party, doesn't he? I mean, he's like incredibly popular.
It's hot. But I mean, if my worry is that he breaks away, and maybe tries to create his own party, or maybe tries to, do something crazy, and that's going to divide the party, more than it is already.
I saw a source that said that he might run in 2024, and I feel like that.
I definitely see that happen.
Because you got to think that he'd campaign for the next 4 years. He would never stop doing rallies, and
he would be the first president to do that. He would be the first president to do that, though.
No, was it Grover Cleveland did that? I don't know, but no, it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. But still, I think I don't know. What were like the states that like surprised you the most in the ones that swung? I think that Georgia was surprising to me. I knew that there was like an awakening happening in Georgia, but just with how close it is there, that really surprised me. And I think it goes.
Even in Georgia, if you look at Georgia, the Republican. So the reason that the Republican didn't win the Senate race is because he didn't have 50%, and then by law, you have to have 50% or it goes to a runoff. But he's leading in votes.
That's I mean, that's fair. And I was thinking more at like the presidential end, just like with how, I mean, because Georgia is somewhere that you think of as like a solidly red state. Mm-hmm. And like even if it doesn't go red, even in the Senate race like this time around, if it becomes a swing state, I think that's going to make it really tough for Republicans going forward, especially if Texas also becomes a swing state. It wasn't this election, not even close really. But there was Biden closed the gap from where Hillary was. And so it's like, if we see Texas and Georgia turn into swing states, I just don't see that happening on the Democratic end. Like, I don't see these states like becoming red states. Maybe you can refresh me if I'm forgetting one. But I think that makes it really hard for Republicans.
No, and so I want to chalk that up, Georgia, as like a one time.
Okay.
We have to watch more elections going forward to see where that leans. But I'm going to say this one election, President Trump, for whatever he is a very polarizing candidate. It's I like him, I don't like him. There is no middle ground with him. And I think a lot of people went out there and they voted against him because they don't like him. And I think that, especially in Atlanta, I read an article in Atlanta that had just in Atlanta, they had a 238% increase in voter registration.
That's insane numbers.
If you get that in Atlanta, I mean, you got to assume 90% of those votes are going to Joe Biden.
Yeah, of course.
And I mean, that's what caught him up in Georgia.
I'm going to counter that being a one-time thing, though, with the fact that the governor race in 2018 was so close between Stacey Abrams and Kemp. I mean, Abrams still says that she won that race. I think that there are some valid claims of voter suppression, but regardless, like even if you say that she lost that race, she was pretty freaking close there. And like the fact that she's not some like super progressive Democrat, but she was, a Democrat almost winning in Georgia. And so like I'm wondering if it's like a trend that's coming in. Like you said, we're gonna have to see more elections. But I feel like that governor race shows that it might be more than just like a one-time thing.
So I'm curious to know if you're President-elect Joe Biden, and congratulations to Joe Biden. I wanted to say that earlier. He won. Congratulations to Joe Biden. What is your first? What's the first issue he has to tackle? Like, what's it gonna be?
Like, okay, wait. Like, what do I want him to do first, or like, what do I think he's gonna do first? You know what I mean?
We can go with both there.
Okay, well, okay. One thing is I saw Mitch McConnell said this recently. He said that he is not going to work with Joe Biden on any appointments to his cabinet that are progressive. He said that he's only going to let through moderates, and this is classic Mitch McConnell in that regard. And so that puts Biden in a bit of a tough position. It's like, is he going to just fill his cabinet with moderates or conservatives, or is he going to try and fight this? And one of the ways I was just seeing a thing on this, there is a way. I think it's called the Vacancies Act, where the president can fill positions that haven't been appointed by the Senate yet, that haven't been like approved by the Senate. And, there's questions for how long this can go on and everything. But that is something like Joe Biden needs to utilize his executive power in like ways that I think are maybe less traditional, but are still legal. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they should do things that are illegal, but I think that he should use his executive power to the fullest, because I think that we've seen that the Republicans in the Senate are willing to they will utilize their power, their institutional power as much as they can. They will, they'll block judicial appointments for a year if they can. You know what I mean? They're shameless with this. And so I feel like that's what Biden needs to do with the executive power. I feel like he needs to, if he has the power to do something, he should do something. And I think that focusing on healthcare, because that seems to be like an issue that really, really resonates with people. I think he says he wants a public option. I would love to see him try and push for a public option. Using the bully pulpit, maybe. I mean, we'll have to see. I hope there's a change of leadership in the House also, though.
So I really wanted to talk about that. We can get into that in a second, because I saw that Nancy Pelosi is really struggling right now.
Oh, I hope they change it. I hope they switch her out. They gotta.
Did you see Did you see the leak on the conference call? Like,
oh yeah,
that's huge.
There is a big wedge happening right now, and I mean, it goes both ways. It's not just progressives upset with Pelosi. There are establishment Dems that are like mad at Pelosi. They're like, you didn't rein in the progressives enough. There is a legit, like, I mean, civil war is probably a little, you know what I mean? But for the fun, that's what's happening right now. There is a split, and it's going to be now. I don't think that they're going to get some progressive that's going to take Pelosi's spot, but I think that when both sides are unhappy with her, I don't see how she stays speaker. You know what I mean? Unless, maybe she can rally the vote somewhere. But what do you think?
No, I don't think there's a way. I think they replace her with a kind of Joe Biden Democrat in the House, kind of more of a moderate Democrat. And I think she's definitely, and that to me is huge.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrats, even on a winning ticket, are having a split like that in Congress.
No, and I think that she just her strategy was that she wanted to send a bunch of message bills to the Senate. And, we're going to pass these bills in the House. We're going to send them to the Senate. And then, we're going to show the people that this is what we want. And the Senate is blocking it. But like the message bills got like no media coverage. No one was ever talking about them, because she was explicit that they were message bills. She would say like, oh, this is a message bill. I don't plan on getting it passed. And so the media wouldn't talk about it, because they're like, oh, this isn't going to get passed. And it was just such a flaw. She she didn't get how message bills are supposed to work. You're supposed to like put it and then get people talking about it and get it like people excited about it. They would just pass these bills that everyone knew wasn't going to go anywhere. And that was just is such a flaw. And like if the goal of having Democrats hold the House was to keep the executive in check, and do that whatsoever, there was no oversight. There, they impeached him once. I mean, it was a little polarizing, but I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, what did they end up losing in the House? 5 seats.
I think when it's all said and done, I think people said it might be 7, but as of right now, I think it's 5.
So I mean, I think you're setting 2022 for a really disastrous run in the midterms. This is just, in my opinion, this is a trampoline effect into 2022. 2022, when there are more seats in the Senate up, there are more seats in the House up, you're going to have people on that side of the ticket. If Nancy Pelosi stays in power, they're going to get voted out.
This is something I am incredibly concerned about. That is why when you said, would I have rather that Democrats won the presidency or the Senate, that trampoline effect is something to be worried about from Democrats. And I think that Democrats need to run good candidates in the primary. You know what I mean? You and me may disagree on what good candidates are, but I think that that trampoline effect is so real. Like, I mean, isn't it you can look at the past 40 years or something. Isn't it like whoever the president is, they win and then the other party does well? Oh no, it can't be 40 years because Democrats held the House for a while. Regardless, that's a very real thing that you're talking about. And I think it's something that they should be very cognizant of.
No, yeah, it is. And all I heard, and this is where I think the media has a huge disconnect with the people, huge disconnect with the people, because I heard a lot of people talking about, a blue wave. That blue wave never came.
No.
And never came. And so now if I'm a Democrat looking at 2022, I'm like, we either fundamentally change our leadership in Nancy Pelosi, or we get crushed in 2022. And then in 2022, I mean, you're going to be with a Republican House and a Republican Senate with a conservative leading Supreme Court. Joe Biden's going to be there for 2 years, not being able to do anything.
No, I think you're almost spot on with that. And I think I don't see how they're calling for a blue wave when, like you said, it was a referendum on Trump. People aren't going to vote against other Republicans if they think that Trump is the only problem. And it was terrible messaging. And you have, Republicans that have already, Republicans are really good at setting the narrative. I wish that, progressives were good at it like this. Republicans are spinning this election like it was a win. You know what I mean? They lose the presidency and they're already saying oh, this was a solid pick. And, it kind of was in some degree.
Yeah,
but it's
kind of is.
Democrats are poorly setting it, and they're letting Republicans take this as a win, and it's just the marketing department for the Democratic Party, it needs to step up its game. In Florida, I mean, the Democratic Party in Florida is just horrible. If you ask me, I think that they lost. I mean, that's where one of the lost seats comes from, was in Florida, I believe. I don't know if it was 2. I think it was just one of them was in Florida. But it's just there's not a taste for moderates in the Democratic Party, in my opinion. People aren't voting for these moderate Dems because the moderate Dems don't give people something to get excited about. You know what I mean? They don't give them something to go to the polls and be excited about. I have so much disagreement with Trump, but his voters were excited to go vote for him. You know what I mean? They felt like he was offering and doing stuff for him. Biden's only thing was I'm not Trump. Things will be like they were under Obama. I won't tell you how, but they were he didn't run on a single policy. And that was during a pandemic. He didn't run on healthcare. He could focus on healthcare in a pandemic. I think you win, a lot more states that way. But I don't know. What do you think?
So, I mean, and that's my huge question, because I'm talking to a lot of people, and I'm like, well, what's Joe Biden's first move? And even the people that I'm talking to are in total disagreement about, where Joe Biden, what is his first political action in the White House? Because in 2008, obviously they got healthcare passed, and 2010 and whatever. But I mean, I don't know what Joe Biden tries to tackle right now, going forward. I mean, it's got to be COVID. I mean, I think that's kind of the easy answer.
That's true, and I bet that if you asked him, that's what he'd say. They'd say, because I think Harris has said this a bunch of times, that it's to get COVID under control. That's the first, that's what they want to tackle first. But I think that you're right. I mean, he hasn't given people anything to think about what he's going to do first. You know what I mean? He hasn't given an agenda. I mean, he has a platform, but he hasn't focused on any of it. And he says he's going to do more for COVID, and I hope he does, because I think that I hope he really fights hard for passage of more stimulus. I mean, that's what I would like to see, is the president in the House getting behind a new stimulus package and really just using the bully pulpit against the Republicans in the Senate to get another round of stimulus passed. I'd say that that's where they should probably be focusing. What do you think?
So yeah, I definitely agree with the stimulus package, and and this is where I feel like a lot of disconnect in the GOP. I think people just have to be realistic about what's going on in this country. There are people out there that need help, and stimulus and unemployment that helps them. So that, to me, should not be a partisan issue. We're already at what 26 trillion or some crazy number in debt. I
Yeah.
mean, within, like a few trillion more.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think that all the fear mongering about the debt is very overblown in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very overblown. But if I'm Joe Biden, what I do is I get on a bus and I go campaign in Georgia.
You think so? You think that's the for the runoff? I mean, that you got it. Yeah, that's probably a good move.
I mean, he has to. I mean, if you think if he does it and they end up with a tie or a non-majority in the Senate, I mean, you're not getting justices passed. You could pack all you want in the House. I mean, vote to add Supreme Court, but I mean, they're not getting through the Senate.
I think that if
Mark Kelly, Mark Kelly is a Democrat and he's from Arizona, but I mean, I would tend to believe that Mark Kelly is more of the Republican leaning.
Of the Joe Biden ilk, the more moderate, more
Yeah, I mean, he's a combat veteran and whatever. So I mean, I got to say that maybe he stands up to the Democrats, and the Senate and says, hey, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm not going to vote with you on this. And I think that's a win, but I think that's kind of a wash. They're definitely going to have to bring something to him to bring him to their side. He's just not going to go over. He's just not going to walk over.
No, I think that's super. That's definitely something to be aware of. I do think that going to hold some rallies in Georgia would be like the best move for Joe Biden, but it's just like I would have also said that holding a few rallies in some of the swing states would have been a better move too. You know what I mean? Maybe going to Ohio a few times. That would have that maybe would have been a good decision. Joe Biden just decided that he doesn't want to campaign or anything. I don't know, and I'm very interested now that the election's basically over. How involved Harris is with the administration. Is she going to be someone that they put at the front? You know what I mean? Is she going to be doing a lot of speeches and stuff, or is she going to be a little bit more behind the scenes like Pence is? Like, I mean, what do you think? I mean, it seems like they're going to put it front and center because they want it done.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Harris is going to be front and center in the DNC, but I think they're definitely going to have to market her in a way that is positive just because of her past in California.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, like being a prosecutor and being what she was. I mean, I think you and I talked about it last time. She wasn't your favorite pick for VP.
No, not at all.
So I mean, I'm not going to say you're going to lose votes because of her, but you're going to lose votes from people who don't vote in elections. They're like, oh, I'm not going to go vote for her. So they're going to have to market her in a good way.
I think it's really curious because we honestly still don't know how she does electorally nationally because she dropped out before the first primary. You know what I mean? So we've never actually seen her run a national race. She won in California, but I mean, that's not the hardest thing to, you know what I mean? When you have the right backing in California, that's not the hardest thing to do. I wonder what her national appeal really looks like. I haven't seen her like approval ratings or anything, but I don't think it's very high. There's a reason she dropped out in the primaries. And so, I mean, I do think that there needs to be a change of strategy. Like from just, if I'm her, she needs to be doing something different than she was doing in the primaries. You know what I mean? If she wants to be president someday.
And I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm pretty sure she struggled in the Democratic primaries in the debates that they had.
Some people thought she did well. I thought that she did okay the first debate, but after that, I mean, she started one of her main points in one of the debates was that Trump should be banned from Twitter. I'm like, talk about an issue that a lot of people don't care about. You know what I mean? Like that is not what a lot of people are focusing on.
Do you think that social media had a play in this election as far as, people voting for Trump because they felt bad for him for, Twitter censoring his tweets and, Facebook and obviously like that? Or do you think that was kind of like a non-issue?
I think that it was probably a non-issue. I got to think the pandemic was the number one thing that people were thinking about, the pandemic and, the effects on the economy from that. I got to think that was the number one issue. Number two, I got to think was the protests and everything that was going on regarding Black Lives Matter. I got to think that was like the second thing. The social media stuff, I think it was less people were thinking about it and maybe just like literally what they're seeing on social media, though. I think that maybe that does have an effect. Less like the perception of social media and just their general like, because I mean, people have always said that, Twitter, Facebook, that they lean left. I disagree on like that's really the case. I think there's a lot of censorship of people on the left. But I know that that's the perception is that they lean left. And so I don't think that anything new came from that, even the censoring of Trump's tweets.
Yeah. Well, that's
Do you think it's a bigger issue? Let me hear what you think.
I mean, I don't think it's a bigger issue. I mean, I think it's so polarizing because you ask some people and it's a big issue. You ask some people and it's not a big issue. In my opinion, it's not a real issue. But I mean, I think that regardless of whatever you want to say, Twitter did censor the president of the United States tweets. So
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, like I don't know.
I mean, I'm upset that they choose if they're going to send, like, in my opinion, I think that big tech needs to be either heavily regulated to enforce free speech laws. I actually think that that's really important. I think that they should be either treated as utilities, that everybody uses these things. They should have to abide by certain standards. Just like we give the NFL certain monopoly privileges. If we're going to do that for big tech, then they should have to uphold certain standards, or they should be broken up. And I think that that's probably less desirable because I think social media kind of works better when everyone's on it. And so there needs to be more regulations on big tech, in my opinion. That being said, though, if Twitter's going to censor him, like, I don't understand. Like, it's not when he's like warmongering against North Korea, or when he's like saying that we're going to like nuke or not nuke, when we're going to bomb civilians in Iran. They decide to do it like right now on like these like issues that are important, but I don't know. It's just like from their point of view, I don't understand like why they're deciding to do it now.
No, right? Yeah,
he hasn't started saying things that aren't
that.
true. Like, this isn't a new thing that he like makes things up. And there's what was it? What was it that the Daily Post? What was it, that like news outlet that got banned from Twitter for posting like a Hunter Biden thing? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No,
it's like a 100-year-old newspaper. They posted something about Hunter Biden, and they got like banned from Twitter or whatever. Now they've since been reinstituted, but still, I think that Twitter is going to be their day of reckoning is coming. I think there's going to be some heavy regulations put on. Now, whether it's from the left or right.
Just a quick note, I just pulled the North Carolina Senate seat because they still have not called this race. Tom Tillis is up by about 100,000 votes. I don't know why they're not calling it, because it says 98% reporting. So I don't know what they're waiting for. I mean,
I don't know why North Carolina wasn't called day after election day. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it seemed pretty clear from that. There hasn't been any big changes. I don't know.
No, there hasn't been. So I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, that's a Senate seat that they're not going to get. And so that'll put the GOP at 49. The GOP is going to get that Senate seat in Alaska. So that'll put them at 50. So, I mean, worse, I think Joe Biden, he has to get on a bus right now and be driving to Georgia to get those 2 Senate seats. Because I remember looking at the Senate seats in Georgia, and there were so many random independents that got 1,000 votes here, 100 votes here, a few thousand votes here. And I mean, you got to think that, I don't think a lot of people are going to vote in the runoff, and that obviously hurts the Dems,
Yeah.
And B, I think, you and I agree that, 70%, 80% of those independent votes go to the GOP.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably fair. I think that's probably a fair analysis. And I mean, has Joe Biden come out and has he said anything, done anything since he's, it's basically been called for him? I mean, have you seen like a statement from him at all yet, or like a signal of where he's going?
No, I haven't. I was actually just at the gym and I was trying to rush home to get on Twitter, and my Wi-Fi is not working. This is what you get for living in North Carolina. But I'm not. I don't know. I can't really get on there right now.
We'll see. Someone in the chat corrected me. It was the New York Post. That was the one that was banned from Twitter for like posting some Hunter Biden thing. So it was the New York Post that was. And then someone says that Biden has given an address. I don't know what he said yet. I guess the bigger question though is how Trump's going to react to it. You know what I mean? Is he going to graciously concede?
I did see Trump's statement, because Trump put out a statement.
Oh, what did he say?
Right. He basically said that he won this election and like he's gonna fight. I mean, if you expected him to say anything different, I don't know what you were thinking. There's no way he goes down without a fight. There's no way, and I think that really hurts the GOP, because I know there are some people in the GOP who are saying, "Hey, you lost. The electorate, voted, Joe Biden. He's president-elect. Time to move on." And then you have some like people like Ted Cruz and others that are saying, "Hey, we're going to fight this thing. We're going to take this all the way to Supreme Court." And to me, in my opinion, that's just the wrong answer. Like, to me, you have to say, "Hey, the electorate voted for Joe Biden. He won, but we had big wins under the ticket. Let's build on that momentum. Let's take this, quote unquote, graciously.
No,
and let's find a way to prepare ourselves for 2022, because that is really where that's really what matters."
Well, and you know that in his heart of hearts, he doesn't actually think that there was voter fraud. You know what I mean? Like he has been talking about this ever since he discovered that there was going to be mail-in votes. Like we knew that this is what was going to happen. You know, we've known for a long time that as soon as there were mail-in votes, he was going to say that there was fraud, whether there was evidence or not. It doesn't look like there's any evidence, but you know, we knew he was going to say this. And there's just like, I mean, he's not saying there's voter fraud in Wisconsin. He's saying that he wants to recount in Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's looking for whatever he can, and like you said, that's hurting his chances. If he's going to run in 2024, that's got to hurt his chances.
So oh, go ahead.
Oh no, what are you gonna say?
So I'm actually curious about where you stand on this, because I have a lot of my friends who I speak to on a pretty regular basis about like, how do we fix the voting system, right? How do we go about this? And one of the things that I said is, in my opinion, you can do three things that will reduce fraud, quote unquote. Is you first off make it a national holiday, you have to vote.
We total agreement on that one.
Okay. Second, at 18, you get a state paid voter registration card. So that is,
I like that. So everyone gets it.
Everyone gets it. So when you
that.
turn 18, bam, here's your voter registration. And then you take those two things and say, go vote. And then you look at the results. You know, because at that way you're saying, hey, I'm giving you the day, you know, you get out there and vote. I believe Australia does that. I believe Australia has it to where it's national holiday.
Well, Australia, I think it's compulsory. Don't they have to vote in Australia?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure in Australia, if you don't vote, you actually get like fined or.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think we should do that. I don't.
No, because I mean, it is someone's prerogative to whether or not they want to, you know, embrace the political system and, you know, and vote. And I mean, obviously, you and I agree, you should. Right, because you know you're voting for, you know, your beliefs. But I feel like if you make it a national holiday, if you give everyone a voter registration card, you know.
What was your third thing?
Well, my third thing is getting rid of the absentee ballots, right? So like wherever you are, like I don't like voting in another state when you live in another state. You know, I know you're gonna have like people in the, like, I'm in the military. Right, my home.
That was the first thing I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, my home record is Florida, so my vote was cast in Florida. So I think you can have circumstances like the military and so forth that, you know, you can absentee ballot, but I feel like voting in the state that you live in should be the answer.
Okay, so if someone is. So you don't like that, you know, there are people in other states and that their votes get cast for states that they are not like, even if they like live there, they're just like not currently there. You know what I mean? What if someone's in, you know, they're gone for like a month or whatever for work? Like, I mean like
that's obviously different, but I'm talking about like people like, I mean, you're seeing it like this large hiatus from California, you know, like where other people are gonna, and you know, another thing is when you move, you know, in my opinion, because I feel like everyone should vote, and you know, I want to encourage voting, and I know some people want to say the GOP doesn't want to encourage voting, but I want to get out there and I want to encourage everyone to vote because, you know, you have more of a say in the system. If you move, your registration moves with you. Okay. It cannot be that hard to encourage voting and make it to where everyone has a vote and everyone is voting for what they believe in. So if you give them a holiday, if you give them a free card that says, hey, you don't have to pay for it. 18 years old, here's your voter registration. You don't need an ID. This was sent to you by the government. This is
so obviously everyone is automatically registered at 18 too then, because that, you know, that would also be part of it, right? So everyone's automatically. Right, yeah. Okay, because I really like that. Because, okay, but then, so how do you feel about voter ID law if that's not the case? I mean, what is, because, you know, that's my issue is like right now, you know, if we can do that where we can make sure that everybody has access to a card, that's totally different. But as of right now, I mean, we know the disproportionate effects that voter ID laws do have on different communities, you know, so like I'm all for what you're saying, but how do you feel about like with what we have right now?
I mean, I am with you, but I also do understand that you have to be able to prove who you are when you arrive to vote. You know, so I mean, but also like it depends like on what type of ID they take. You know, if it's a random state ID, if it's a library card, you know, what are the laws in that state? I mean, I think that matters too. But I think I definitely agree that the voter registration and the voter ID laws, they disproportionately affect minorities.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how we fix that going forward. I mean, I would say like what I just said, but I mean, as of right now, I don't know the answer to fix it.
No. Okay. How do you feel about a more uniform system? Because I feel like that's one of the things we're seeing with this election is we're seeing every state has different laws. We're seeing, some states are taking a really long time to do it. Florida was able to do it on the first day. You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about a more uniform system for national elections?
So speaking of Florida, I mean, in 2000, Florida was crazy. Like, I mean,
That's a good point, actually.
And for Florida to be able to go from 2020 to count over 10 million votes, and by what we knew, they called Florida 11 o'clock on, the 3rd.
Mhm.
I mean, how do we model that and give that to all the states? Like Pennsylvania, they couldn't count till the day before or the day of.
Well, it was like they were accepting ballots that came in that were postmarked on election day. They were accepting them up to 3 days out from the election. That's part of why it was taking so long, to my understanding.
So okay, I do have an issue, I guess, with that in general. Like, I feel like your vote has to get there before November 3rd to be counted.
Well, so if those are the rules beforehand, definitely. Like if people know that, because where I'm in Oregon, that's the case actually. Is your vote has to be, if they don't have it on November 3rd, then it's not getting counted. If people know that, that's the thing. There has to be like a hard cutoff. Like it's not cool. Like what Trump was saying, it's like when people thought that their vote just had to be postmarked beforehand, and then to say, oh, we shouldn't count these votes. I'd say that's different. If we decide beforehand, everybody knows, hey, it has to be in on election day. If you didn't mail it in time, you got to turn it in on a drop box. I think that is more reasonable. But like if Trump's saying right now that those shouldn't count, I don't think that that's cool because they didn't know that,
Right. And I think in this election, you had a lot of people, same day register, same day vote.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people who just said, hey, I'm going to go out and vote. And, maybe they didn't know the rules of their state. Because I know North Carolina, I don't believe you can register the same day and vote in North Carolina. I know like in Florida, you have to be registered by a certain time. And I mean, I think a large part that's an issue that we're going to have going forward in this country is why do we have so many different voting laws in so many states?
Yeah. Well, so do you support more uniform? Like if the Senate, House and the presidents, if they all get together, they agree, hey, we're going to have a national standard for how we do elections. Would you get behind that? Or do you like this individual states having, or not do you like it? Because obviously it's annoying, but like, do you think that it's more important that states have that, like, that sovereignty, or do you like, what is your take?
I mean, I think if we picked a good model, so I think if we looked at Florida, because I mean, obviously you don't want to throw garbage at it, but if you look at Florida and what Florida was able to do with, early mail-in voting, absentee ballots, voting on like in-person voting, have all those votes counted, 10 million plus votes in a day. If we can take that model and apply it to the rest of the country, I have zero problem with that.
Yeah, no, okay.
I think that would definitely give a lot more people faith in our election system, because I think one thing that you're going to have going forward is a lot of people are saying, I mean, I know you saw the memes, like, why is it taking so many days? Who's counting these votes? And yeah, it's a joke and yeah, it's funny, but it is people and their lack of trust in our voting system.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Oh, of course. And I think that's happening kind of across the board a little bit. I mean, we are seeing like trust in just institutions in general, like eroding. And, I've seen like a graphic. It was like ever since Watergate, like we've seen people's trust in government just going down, down, down. And like, that's not good longevity. You know what I mean? It can't go down to a certain point where like at a certain, that becomes a little dangerous. And so I agree. We should, I don't think it's an end all be all, but I do think that it's important that people feel like like when both can't, because, now Hillary Clinton said, 2016 was stolen. Trump says 2020 stolen. At a certain point, like it becomes a little dangerous, if people aren't agreeing that like, hey, these are the real outcomes. I don't think it's going to, come to violence this time around, but that's something that's foreseeable.
And so that's the fight that I'm having with my friends, on the GOP side of the spectrum that I'm talking to right now. At some point, you just got to admit you lost.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It can't be, Russian interference. It can't be voter fraud. Because like, what's it going to be in 2024? Are we going to set up excuses, or are we just going to say, hey, the candidate lost, and that candidate, their electorate didn't vote them in? Like, are we taking self-responsibility, or are we passing the blame onto the system that we're telling the American people to have faith in? So I can't tell the American people to have faith in a voting system when I'm going to come out and I lose and say the voting system was failure. Because I guarantee you, and I want to say, if President Trump would have won, he would have came out and said, oh, the voting system was fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
And especially if he would have won and lost the popular vote. Hey, that's why we have the Electoral College. So you can't pick and choose when you want to have faith in system. Because I believe, I mean, this is a whole different debate. I like the Electoral College.
Oh,
right?
I do not. Yeah, that might be a
Yeah.
different debate, but yeah, no, I think we should abolish the electoral college.
No, so I do. I like it, and but I think if you're going to establish faith in it, you have to establish faith in it when you lose.
Yeah, I think that's a nuanced point. Now I got to ask you how, like, when we're talking about faith and stuff, polling. I mean, the polls, even if Biden wins, they were so off. You know what I mean?
Terrible.
They were crazy off. I mean, we're talking national to state level. The polls were terrible. I mean, what do you think? Do people not pay attention to polls anymore? Is it just a Trump thing? I mean, because polls were pretty accurate in 2018. What do you think?
So that's actually a good point, and we could talk about this because I don't want to go as far as say it's voter suppression, But if I live in a state like Wisconsin, there was a poll that had Biden winning Wisconsin by 17 points.
Yeah.
So if I'm a Republican in Wisconsin, I'm like, well, he's going to get killed in Wisconsin. I'm not going to go vote.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so you think that it's like a nefarious thing or not? Or what are you saying?
I mean, I don't know. So, I mean, and this is, being foolish, but I believe generally people have good intentions in life.
Okay.
But I mean, in saying that, the polls were beyond wrong.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are they doing? And you and I talked about it last time, the hidden Trump vote or the shame Trump vote. I mean, how are they not accounting for that? Are they not accounting? Are they? I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't.
People are foolish if they think that doesn't exist. If there are not people that are not going to say that they vote for Donald Trump that actually do. If they won't tell someone on the phone, you know what I mean? They're worried to tell someone on the phone that those people exist. How big of a number of those people? I mean, if the polls were this wrong,
it's got to be big because, I mean, you had people saying Texas was going to go blue. You had people saying Florida was Florida was going to go blue. And, I mean, they weren't even close.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, and the thing that we talked about earlier that I don't know how you missed is how does Joe Biden lose at the top of the ticket, but you have progressive policies on the bottom end of the ticket, like in Florida that pass, where you have close races in like Texas had a few close Senate races there. Like how do you have those right, but on the top of the ticket the polls were so wrong?
Yeah, and I mean that makes me think that it might be something that maybe not unique to Trump, but unique to the perception of a really people of this candidate that people think was some people think is untouchable. You know what I mean? They don't want to be associated with him. Like, I mean, maybe it's just like, I mean, we didn't see that with Bush though. I mean, people really didn't like Bush. We did not see these like large swings in the poll. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it could be a total distrust in the media. Like, people associate polls with the media. If someone calls you and says, hey, I'm a pollster for so-and-so, maybe that person just says, I don't want to talk to you. Or maybe they give them some BS answer that, they really don't mean, and they're going to go vote something differently. I mean, I don't know.
No, and I think that, that's one of the things with Trump actually, is I think that he, at least in 2016 more so, was speaking to things that like a lot of people actually thought. Like, I think that a lot of people do think that the media is very biased. Do you know what I mean? I think that most people think that. If anyone with a rational, brain thinks that the media, has biases, I happen to think that they're not necessarily a left bias. I think that it's a Democratic establishment bias because, I think that we see that in the primary. It's like, the way the media talked about Bernie. But regardless, though, anyone that's saying that the media doesn't have a bias, they're wrong. And that's why I think that when Trump says fake news, that resonates with people. You know what I mean? And that's why that sows even more distrust in just our institutions, not just government institutions, our media institutions. There's a lot of people who will be like, oh, you saw it on CNN? That's not real. You know what I mean? You can't look at CNN. And I don't think that that's a healthy way to look at it. But like, there's such a clear bias that they won't own up to that does lead people to believe that. You know what I mean?
But also, I think the media has to take a look at themselves and say, what are we doing wrong? Because the media is missing the message with the people. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's what the Democrats need to do. Hey, what are we doing wrong that we are somehow misconnecting with these people? And I think the media needs to do the same thing. Like, they are missing the mark with people in general.
And I think that there's a lot of things, I don't think that it's necessarily like the media is trying to do these, there's this really interesting book called Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky and Ed Herman. And they like kind of go over like how these biases that are in the media, like how those kind of play out. And like some of it is just hiring practices. You know what I mean? Like, you have these certain beliefs, you have these certain biases. You're going to hire people that also have those biases. The people that donate to these media companies, that's going to have a pretty big impact on it. And so like, I think that they're, I don't think it's necessarily intentional. I think some of it's probably intentional, but I don't think that all of it is. I think part of it is just like the way that these systems work.
But I agree with you on your point that it may be more intentional to the Democratic establishment than it is to the
The
left
left
side.
per se.
Yeah, yeah.
It's anti like not anti-populist, but like it's anti-establishment. You know what I mean? The media is anti people who perceived as anti-establishment.
Right. And I mean, I think one definitely thing that we're going to look at, and I remember looking, because I know we were right, we talked about it, was Joe Biden outperformed Hillary in the national poll.
Oh,
Last time I looked,
yeah.
he was up by like 6 million votes.
Yeah, he's up by a lot.
Yeah, so he's up by a lot there. And I mean, I think we kind of predicted that. But that's interesting.
That was because Clinton was disliked, in my opinion, though. You know what I mean? Because Trump also this time around got more votes than Clinton did in 2016, which is really interesting. You know what I mean? That's just how many more people voted. But that's actually something that's worth noting. Trump grew his voting bloc. More people voted for Trump this time. You know what I mean? And like that's actually kind of significant. I mean, this was not the story that the media told us. This was all these people secretly regretted voting for Trump. They don't want to vote for him anymore. They were obviously wrong about that. You know what I mean? We saw that more people voted for him.
Yeah, I mean, Trump overperformed with the Latin American community. He overperformed with African American community. I think the one I did see, like he had I think he had a 7-point negative swing with white males with a college degree. I think he did 7 points less than he did last election. But I mean, we'll wait till the rest of the polling comes out on that one. But I mean, yeah, I mean, generally more people in this election did vote, which is great. But that's awesome. You know.
Yeah. Well, no, you brought up something that I feel like the Democrats are going to have to start thinking about is that ever since Obama's first election in 2008, every election since then, Democrats have gotten a smaller portion of Black Americans voting. You know what I mean? It was highest in 2008 with Obama. It was smaller in 2012, smaller in 2016, smaller this time around. This is something that Democrats need to start thinking about. You know what I mean? And I don't know exactly how you address that. And also their performance with Latin Americans was, you know, they still win with these groups. Don't get me wrong, but like they're underperforming from where they previously did. And that's, you know, I think that says something.
Yeah,
when
I mean,
Trump's
especially
perceived as a racist is winning.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Especially when Trump is like perceived by the media as like a racist, you know, and all these horrible things. But he's performing better.
Yeah, it's better.
You know, yeah, better with these communities, and that's where I think the disconnect is. Like, I don't know how the media fixes their connection with, you know, the average person.
No, and I guess I want to I do think that Trump holds many racist beliefs. You know, maybe you and me disagree. I think that it's fair to call Trump a racist, but I think that that the way that the media goes about saying it, I don't think works for a lot of people, especially when they want to deny that Joe Biden also has a pretty racist past, in my opinion. You know what I mean? He has done some things that are, you know, the crime bill. I think that the way that he talked about the crime bill, I think that, you know, and the things that he said about segregation, I think that there is this like denial of certain things and this overplaying of other things that make people they don't believe that.
So I think with the DNC, when they impeached Trump, and I don't think they had the support from the American people to push it forward. I think that was kind of like a Nancy Pelosi show where, hey, we're going to ram this through and we're going to get this done. Like, he's going to be impeached. I don't think the American people supported that. And I think that is where you're going to see, you know, the American people saying, you know, we don't care what you call him because we don't care what the media says about him. Like, we're going to vote, you know, based on, you know, what our beliefs are.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, I think, you know, we'll probably wrap it up pretty soon. But like, what do you think was the biggest factor in this election? You know what I mean? What do you think is like, you know, I assume you want more Republicans to win going forward. Like, what do you think is like the biggest factor that like Republicans could have done differently to win more of, you know, focus on Hunter Biden? Was it the dealing with the pandemic? I mean, what do you think was the biggest change you would have liked to have seen?
I definitely think if they get a stimulus package passed prior to the election, just to give money to the people, just to have that like good feeling, you know, I feel like that would have helped them out a lot. But I mean, it's got to be COVID. It's got to be the way President Trump handled COVID. Like that's just got to be why he lost.
Okay. And would you roll in, you know, Trump getting COVID? Would you roll that into that? Like that was a big part of it.
I mean, definitely him coming down with COVID definitely did not help.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, like, because I mean, I believe it, and I think we talked about it last time. If I believe COVID doesn't happen, I think he wins.
I'd say if Biden's still the nominee, you know, it's a different campaign.
Yeah.
I think there's a good chance that, yeah, probably. Which I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not happy about that. It took a pandemic to beat, in my opinion, one of the most beatable presidents in history. Like it took a pandemic to like be able to for Biden to make that swing. But yeah, I'd say that's probably true.
It took a pandemic and way more of the electorate actually getting out there and voting.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, mail-in voting obviously had a huge impact. Well, all right. Well, this is a good convo, and maybe watch as soon as the stream's over. There's gonna be like some breaking news, and all the states have flipped. Hopefully not. But you never know. But
I don't know. Yeah, but we'll talk soon.
All right, talk soon. All right, you have a good one.
All right, see you.